Okay, I am going to give you a presentation on the profession service cycle, and I happened to run across some slides that were used by Roger Greer back in 1991 at a guide conference. IBM used to run conferences. They were huge conferences. It was called Guide for the commercial kind of marketplace, and Share for the technical marketplace, for those of you folks who have been around for some time. But in any case, I took some notes from a conference, from a presentation that Roger made. I need to say something about Roger Greer. He was the Dean of the School of Library and Information Management at the University of Southern California, USC. I sat on his advisory council for years and years, and Roger was a dean of a librarian, and he was the dean of several different schools in several different universities. And every time he would become a dean, he would change the name of the library school to the School of Library and Information Management, because Roger would argue that the heir to the role of information management should accrue to the people who actually do information management, which were the librarian people, the library people. And he would observe that those of us who come from the data processing or the information technology domain, we don't actually do information management. We do record processing, data processing, basically. So the rightful heir of information management should accrue to the librarian. Roger was making the presentation about the profession service cycle, and what he was doing in this presentation, he was differentiating the professional from labor. He's making differentiation, and he basically was describing the service cycle. Here's the profession service cycle. Here's the attribution here for Roger. But in step one, what the professional does, he diagnoses or analyzes the need. It's a diagnosis. And then based upon the diagnosis, what the professional would do was prescribe a solution. And there may be multiple solutions actually, but he would prescribe the solution. Then the technician would apply the solution or implement the solution, and evaluate the results of the application. Now, based upon the evaluation, they could go into the cycle again to diagnose if perform another diagnosis, prescribe another solution, apply the solution, and evaluate the end result. So that would be the profession service cycle. Now, my observation here would be here's Roger's point. The profession operates over here on this side of the cycle, and the trade operates over here on that side of the cycle. So you have the differentiation between the profession and the trade. And that was basically the point that Roger was making in this presentation. But I would observe the engineering style of work is being done over here. What you need here to do that kind of engineering work is the ontology. You have to have the logic structure of the facts that are relevant to the existence of whatever the domain is that you're trying to deal with. You need the ontological structure, which gives you the logic basis for diagnosing the problem and prescribing a solution. Then what you need over on this side, the trade side, is the methodological approaches. This would be a manufacturing idea. Here you want to implement, you do implementation, so this would be manufacturing. Now I use the engineering and the manufacturing terminology because I've argued for quite a long time. What the enterprise needs is engineering work. We need to design the enterprise. The enterprises of today have never really been designed. They happen. The formalizations happen over long periods of time. Basically, as the enterprise tends to grow over time, they add more and more people. They have to formalize things and become explicit. Then they have to define formal systems. They could even have formal, automated systems for managing the enterprise. Actually, in the old days, back in the 50s, 60s time frame, they were were manual systems. There was a big systems and procedures community that defined the manual systems. And they were building them up little by little over some long period of time, where they were the formalities, that was the systems that were required to manage the enterprise. Well, those of us who came from the data processing domain, where we had stored programming devices, what we did, we took the systems that had been built by the manual systems built by systems of procedures, and we automated them. We ran the systems on computers, and thereby saved time and money. So basically, those of us who built the systems, we were actually building the enterprise. We weren't doing enterprise engineering, we were doing enterprise manufacturing. We were building and running systems. If you ask somebody today what we do in data processing or information technology, IT, we basically say we build and run systems. That's a manufacturing concept. Now, I have been making this differentiation between engineering and manufacturing for quite some time, because the kinds of descriptive representations, the kinds of models are different. The models you need for engineering are ontologically based models, whereas the models that you need for manufacturing are methodological based models. So I've been making this differentiation. Interestingly enough, I happen to run across these slides by Roger Greer, which was differentiating the profession basically from trade. And it maps very, very consistently with the engineering and manufacturing. Now, it is little wonder why those of us who come from the information technology community, we have some, come under some criticism at times, because we build implementations that don't have anything to do with whatever the enterprise is trying to deal with from a general management standpoint. You know, we are accused at times of being an application in search of a problem, a solution in search of a problem. You can see why this would happen. We don't diagnose the enterprise requirements. We don't diagnose their need. We are not the ones who prescribe solutions. You know, we are the ones who build applications, actually, by its very name. Build applications, evaluate the end result of the application. So we classically are a trade, those of us who come from the information technology community. Now, there are people in the information technology domain that would like to make IT, information technology, into a profession, and within that, enterprise architecture into a profession. And I would suggest that there's no way you're going to make anything into a profession until you have the ontological structures. You need to have the formal logical structure, the classification of the elementary components that exist upon which the end object, in our case enterprise, is dependent for its existence. Until you have an ontology or define the laws of nature, it's never going to be a profession, because there's no way you diagnose a requirement or diagnose a need without that kind of a logic structure, and there's no way you prescribe solutions. So, you know, with all due respect, I encourage people to try to make it a profession, but Roger went on to describe the characteristics of a profession. I don't have those slides with me, as a matter of fact, but he elaborated that in his presentation he was making it back in 1991. Now, I would say that here's a metaphor. The enterprise is the patient. You know, if you use a medical metaphor, the enterprise is a patient, and management is the brain. Basically, management can tell you where the pain is. We're not making enough money. We're spending too much money. We need the customers are dissatisfied. We need new products. We need innovation. They're telling you where the pain is. Basically, that's what the brain is basically doing. And the enterprise architect ought to be the doctor. Okay. To diagnose the pain, based upon the description of the pain, where the pain is coming from. If we have the ontological structure, now we can actually identify where the sources are of the pain, and then we can prescribe solutions to, you know, what might be done. And by the way, there may be more than one prescription for any one kind of pain, which would say there are more than one methodology that might be relevant for employment in the enterprise. But in any case, the enterprise architect ought to be like the doctor, take an x-ray or analyze the patient, and based upon what the understanding is of where the pain is, and diagnose the pain and then prescribe the solution. And then IT basically is the technician. They're the ones who basically would apply the solution, build the application, and then evaluate the end result. So the basic idea that Roger was addressing was this issue that what differentiates a profession from trade is the ability to diagnose and to prescribe. And once again, Roger's point, he was describing the characteristics of profession that had educational implications to it. You probably, in order to do the engineering kind of work, you need deontological structures, which have to do with laws of nature and so on. Those are the kind of things you would expect to find in a university kind of a curriculum. And the trade, you can go to trade school and learn how to create different objects, or chemicals or that kind of thing. So that was the basic point of his presentation. But I think it's it illuminates some of the issues we have to deal with and why some of the frustrations that the management has. In fact, I think that we are observed as not meeting the expectations of the enterprise, or we're not aligned. We're doing implementations that are not aligned with the requirements of the enterprise. In fact, in the last 25 or 30 years, alignment has been in the top 10 characteristics that management people say that data processing or information technology needs to deal with. The issues that are significant from an IT or DP perspective. So in the last 3 years, I think that I have the statistics correct. The last 3 years, alignment turns out to be at the top 3. I think what general management is basically saying, hey, we're spending a lot of money down there in IT, and we're not too confident about whatever we're doing with the money has anything to do with what we think the enterprise is all about, or what we're thinking about in the enterprise. So you can see why the alignment issue might be a factor here, because those of us who come from IT or DP, we really don't do engineering. We don't engineer the enterprise. We're not designing the enterprise. We build systems. We are building and running systems. We're getting the code to run, in effect. We're doing the implementation kind of work. So I think this explains that. I think this is a significant issue, and appreciate your taking a few moments to think through this issue. And I think where we need to go is we need to get to a point where we are a profession. We, the enterprise architecture folks, are a profession. We do have an ontology. We do diagnose the problems of the enterprise and prescribe solutions. So I think that's where it needs to go in the foreseeable future, not someday in the sweet by and by, but in the foreseeable future. So thank you.